Hey up everybody, welcome back to the How Do Cycling YouTube channel, where today I am going to be talking to you about the VELOGAMES Dwars van Vlaanderen. This is a race that is usually won by an attacker. If you look back at the previous years, in fact the last time that it was won by really a bunch sprint, I guess you'd say, was back in 2016 with Jens de Busche. So really I think you're going to be wanting to split a team quite nicely between some attackers and also some sprinters to try and cover both options. If you wanted to go a bit more risky, perhaps you could go very much attacker focused or very much sprinter focused to try and kind of put all your eggs in one basket, so to say. Pogacar and Van der Poel, the most expensive riders. I think that Pogacar is a very good option when you consider that this race, although yes, a cobbled classic, there aren't actually that many cobbled sectors on this race, but there are quite a lot of just short, sharp tarmac climbs, which I think would really suit Pogacar a lot more. Perhaps just because we haven't seen how he goes on kind of cobbled races too much. So Pogacar is definitely a good option, and considering that we've seen solo attackers are quite successful in this race, Pogacar is certainly a good rider to pick onto your teams, even though he is 32. Van der Poel is another good one. He didn't do too great last year at this race just because he was using it, he was like tapering for Flanders, but this is going to be the first cobbled race that he is doing before Flanders, so it's going to be pretty important for him to do a pretty good race here. So I do think that Van der Poel is, again, another good choice for you to put onto your teams, but he does also have Jasper Philipsen in the team as well, so just bear that in mind. Van der Poel will likely be the attacker rather than like the bunch sprinter, but he has looked pretty good recently. Pidcock is kind of growing into some form, so I'm not going to say don't pick him, but I think there are likely some better ones. Jacobsen and Lampard haven't looked too great recently, especially Jacobsen. He got dropped against Velvogem. Lampard, I think, again, is still building some form up. In fact, I'm not really sure how he'll even go at Flanders, but I think Roubaix might be more his target. Pedersen is a great pick, looked good at Gent Wevelgem, can be in an attacking move or he can also be for a sprint. Great choice, Pedersen. Philipsen, weird one. I do think that he'll be there in a sprint at the end, but for 24, would I be more likely to pick Mads? More than likely, but Philipsen is still a good one for 24. Greg's probably not a good pick. Sam Bennett, Moscon aren't very good picks, neither are Ackermann, Arambarou, Ballerini. Tige Benoot, without Christophe Laporte and Wout van Aert here, Tige Benoot seems to be the attacking option for Jumbo-Visma. They do have Olav Koy in as a kind of sprinter option, so I think that Benoot is a good option for this race just because he will have more freedom to be the leader of the team. Groenewegen I kind of see as being a bit like Jacobsen. He might get dropped on those climbs more than likely. Christophe could be a good one just because he did look alright at Gent Wevelgem. I think he finished in 11th place. Naesen hasn't looked too great, neither is Stibar or Trentin. I expect Trentin to be more than likely working for Pogacar. 18 pointers, I really like Tergis. I think he's likely the best one. You could also go with last year's winner, Dylan van Baarle. He won with a solo move of about 50 kilometers last year. Maybe Tim Vellens, but he hasn't looked too great since like February, so I'm not really too sure what to read into him. The other 18 pointers I'm not really a fan of. 16 points, I do like Kung and Madouas because they looked really good at E3. Of course, Kung did Gent Wevelgem, Madouas didn't, so is Madouas going to be a bit fresher? Possibly, but I do see that Groupama FDJ don't really have a sprinter here, so therefore they're going to be quite aggressive in the moves. And I think that Kung and Madouas will be the centre of that team, so I think that both of them are really good choices for you to put onto your team. 14 pointers, I quite like Coquard just because he has done okay in this race in the past. The short, sharp hills are kind of very Ardennes-esque, and he is also a very good climber. We saw that at Paris, so I think that Coquard is a good one for 14 points. Heinrich Hausler and Søren Klauw Andersen would be good ones too, Søren Klauw especially, just because we saw how he looked at Gent Wevelgem, finishing in 5th place for the late attack. I think that Søren Klauw, this is going to be his last cold race, he's not doing Flanders, so I think that he'll be quite determined to get a pretty decent win here before shooting off to the Ardennes for some reason. Other 14 pointers, again, I'm not too big of a fan of. 12 pointers, Dries de Bont, Stan de Wolf could be good ones, maybe Marco Haller, Connor Swift. I think your best one is likely Dries de Bont, maybe Amari Capio. If it comes back to a sprint, he could be a good one for 12. But I think more than likely I'd be favouring the 10 pointers. You've got Campenaerts, who would be a good attacking option for Lotto Soudal. You've got Arnaud Delis as a sprinter. You've also got Olav Koy as a sprinter here. You've got Max Canter as a sprinter, DuPont, and I think that those are better choices than the 12 pointers that I just mentioned before. Maybe Quinn Simmons if you wanted another attacking option. especially since they don't have Stuyven here in this race, so he might be given a bit more freedom, but he has DNF the last 2 races that he's done, so probably not that great. Fred Wright was up there in Ghent-Wevelgem, maybe he'll have a bit more freedom considering that Mohoric isn't in this race. 8 pointers, not a big fan of a lot of these, maybe Geniet's just because they don't have a sprinter, so he might have a bit more freedom. But other than that, yeah, I'm not a big fan of the 8 pointers. I'd much rather you look at the 6 pointers. You got Bissiger, you got Hugo Hoel. He could maybe launch a bit of a surprise, especially with Sepp van Mark not looking too great. You've also got Ian Livens, who looked good at Ghent-Wevelgem. I think he finished inside the top 20, and he finished in, I think, 18th place, 19th place of this race last year. So I think that he's a very safe 6 pointer. I think that he could certainly get a top 20 in this race again this year. But other than that, you got maybe Joris Nieuwenhuis. He finished, I think, top 30 at E3, so he's looking in really good form. But there are a lot of other kind of leaders on that team at DSM, so maybe don't pick him for this race. But other than that, you maybe have Taco van der Hoorn. Mick van Dijk could be a really cool one just because he looked so good in the under 23 races. Dries van Gestel, 3rd place at Ghent-Wevelgem. He's probably going to be the most popular 6 pointer from now on. I think that he's a really good one, by the way. 4 pointers, you do have some good ones towards the bottom. Of course, you could always kind of pick riders to go in the breakaway, but I think you could pick Ben Turner. He's finished top 30 at E3 and Ghent-Wevelgem. Looked really good getting him the moves at Ghent-Wevelgem, so I think that Ben Turner's a really good one. Other than that, you might go for Julian Vermote for assist points for Mathieu van der Poel, or you could go with Søren Varnsgaard, who is a really good sprinter for Uno X. I think he finished top 20 at the Blues de Pin, so I think that Søren Varnsgaard is also a really good one. So those are my 3 highest kind of recommended 4 pointers. In terms of teams that you could select, you could pick something like this. You've got kind of attackers in Pogacar, Kung and Craig Anderson, and then you've got some sprinters in Kooi and Pedersen, kind of a nice split. You could also not go with Pogacar and go with Van der Poel. You could put those anywhere that you'd liked. Maybe you could put them onto Kung to get Tergis, for example. Or you could have, you know, Kung, and then you could have Dries van Gestel in as your, instead of Ben Turner or something like that. You know, the options are kind of endless. Or you could have put them onto certain crowd to get Madouas if you wanted Kung and Madouas. So you could have something along any of those lines. If you just wanted to play it really safe, you can just pick kind of Van der Poel, Pogacar and Pedersen. You are quite limited in what you have for the rest of your team, so you'd probably have to pick some 4 pointers and some 6 pointers. So that's just pick Adi Livens. So you'd have to go with something like that if you wanted kind of the 3 big riders on your team. That is my preview of the Dwars Vlaanderen. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this race, what you think of the riders, who you're thinking of putting on. And yeah, all that's left to say is to keep safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!